The Bridge of Silent Promises. The small town of Evermere was known for its quiet streets, the whispering river that cut through its heart, and the old stone bridge that had stood for centuries. People believed the bridge carried countless untold stories, secrets left in the silence of its arches. Among them was the story of Elena and Daniel. Elena grew up in Evermere, the daughter of a librarian. She spent her days buried in books, weaving dreams of places far beyond the town's borders. Daniel, on the other hand, had just returned from years of traveling. A photographer by passion, he carried a camera and a restless spirit, always searching for moments that told more than words ever could. Their paths crossed one autumn evening. Elena was sitting at the bridge, sketching the view of golden leaves floating on the river. Daniel, intrigued by the way she seemed so absorbed in her world, raised his camera and captured the moment. The click startled her, and when she turned, their eyes met. "You should have asked before taking my picture," Elena said with a small frown. Daniel smiled sheepishly. "I'm sorry. But you looked as if you belonged here. Like you were part of the story this place wants to tell." That sentence was the beginning of everything. Over the following weeks, they met often at the bridge. Daniel showed Elena his photographs, landscapes from deserts, bustling cities, frozen mountains. Elena shared with him the stories she had written in her notebooks, tales of love, loss, and hope. Slowly, they realized how their worlds blended. His images gave her words a setting, her words gave his images a soul. As winter approached, their bond deepened. They would walk through the frosted streets, their hands brushing until finally, one night, Daniel gently held hers. Under the bridge's arch, where lanterns flickered against the snow, he whispered, "I think I've been searching for you all along." But love, as always, was tested by time. One spring morning, Daniel received an offer to travel abroad for an important photography project. It was everything he had worked for, but it meant leaving Evermere, leaving Elena. She encouraged him to go, even though her heart ached. Dreams should never be caged, she told him. Before he left, they stood on the bridge at sunset. The river glimmered with light, and the air was filled with unspoken fears. Daniel held her close and said, "Promise me, no matter where I go, no matter how long I'm gone, we'll find each other here again." Elena nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "The bridge will wait for us." Years passed. Letters came and went, sometimes delayed, sometimes lost. Distance grew heavy, and silence sometimes stretched too long. Yet Elena returned to the bridge every season, whispering her heart into the wind, trusting the promise they had made. Then, one summer evening after 3 long years, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned shades of rose and gold, Elena saw a figure standing at the far end of the bridge. A camera hung around his neck. Her heart raced. It was Daniel. He looked older, his face touched by countless journeys, but his eyes held the same warmth. He walked toward her slowly, as if afraid she might vanish if he moved too fast. Elena's tears fell before words could. "I'm home," Daniel whispered, cupping her face gently. "I kept my promise." And beneath the bridge of silent promises, with the river carrying their story forward, they sealed their love with a kiss, timeless, unshaken, and whole. Whispers of the ocean. The sound of crashing waves had always been Amelia's favorite melody. Every summer, she returned to her grandmother's seaside cottage, perched on the edge of a quiet coastal village. The cottage smelled of salt, old books, and lavender, and its windows opened to an endless view of the ocean that seemed to stretch forever. One evening, while the sun melted into shades of gold and crimson, Amelia walked along the shoreline, her sandals dangling from her hand. That was when she first saw him. He was sketching the horizon in a small leather-bound notebook, his head bent in concentration, his dark hair tousled by the wind. She might have walked past him, but the wind carried one of his pages into the tide. Without hesitation, Amelia dashed forward and snatched it before it disappeared into the water. "Careful," she said, handing it back with a smile. He looked up, his eyes the color of stormy seas, deep, restless, and captivating. "You saved my sunset," he replied softly, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to pause. His name was Ethan. He was an artist who traveled from town to town, capturing fleeting moments in sketches and paintings. Unlike Amelia, who found comfort in routine, Ethan thrived on change and movement. Yet, as they spent the following days together, sharing stories, laughter, and long walks by the ocean, Amelia felt as though she had known him her whole life. They began meeting every morning at the pier. She would bring coffee, he would bring a new drawing. Sometimes they talked for hours about dreams and fears, other times they simply sat in silence, listening to the ocean's whispers. But beneath their growing closeness lingered an unspoken truth: Ethan never stayed in one place for long. His art demanded exploration, and Amelia's life was deeply rooted in the village and her family. One night, under a sky scattered with stars, Ethan confessed, "I never thought I'd want to stay anywhere. But with you, everything feels different." Her heart ached at his words. She wanted to believe love could anchor him, but she also feared she was just another stop along his journey. The day of his departure came sooner than she expected. He stood by the pier with his worn suitcase, the waves lapping gently at the wooden posts. Amelia tried to smile, but her eyes betrayed her sorrow. "I don't know when I'll be back," Ethan admitted, his voice trembling. She reached for his hand, holding it tightly. "Then promise me this," she whispered. "Wherever you go, paint something that reminds you of me. That way, I'll always be with you." Ethan nodded, his eyes glistening, and kissed her forehead gently before stepping onto the bus that would take him away. Months passed. Letters arrived, each one carrying sketches of distant cities, mountains, and rivers. But in every envelope, Amelia found something else too, a small drawing of the sea, their sea, the place where they first met. And one spring morning, as Amelia stood on the beach watching the horizon, she saw a familiar figure walking toward her. His suitcase was gone, replaced by a simple satchel. His stormy eyes softened when they met hers. "I tried to leave," Ethan said, breathless. "But every canvas, every painting led me back here, to you." Amelia didn't answer with words. She simply ran into his arms, and the ocean roared its approval, waves crashing behind them as though sealing their love in eternity. From that day on, Ethan never left the village. He painted the ocean, the skies, and the woman who had become his home. And Amelia, with every brushstroke he painted, knew that sometimes love was not about holding someone back, but about giving them a reason to stay. The Song of Two Hearts. The autumn air in Florence carried the scent of roasted chestnuts and fading roses. Along the cobblestone streets, where golden leaves swirled like whispers of forgotten poetry, lived Clara Rossi, a young woman who spent most of her days at the small bookshop her grandmother had left her. Clara loved the silence of books, but inside, she longed for something more, something that would make her heart race beyond the rhythm of everyday life. One evening, as the rain painted silver ripples across the Arno River, Clara stayed late in her shop, arranging old novels by candlelight. The door creaked open, and a man stepped in, shaking the rain from his coat. His name was Daniel Whitmore, a pianist from London who had come to Florence seeking inspiration for a composition he had been struggling to finish. "Do you have something about music?" he asked, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who had been searching too long. Clara led him to a shelf filled with biographies of composers and collections of sheet music. Their fingers brushed when they reached for the same book, Letters of Chopin. Both laughed softly, and in that brief spark, the air shifted between them. Daniel returned the next day, and the day after. Sometimes he bought books, but most of the time, he stayed to talk. He told Clara about the way music haunted him, how melodies would come in fragments, like broken pieces of a dream he couldn't quite piece together. Clara, in turn, spoke of how she had always wanted to paint, but had buried that dream beneath the weight of responsibility after her grandmother's passing. Weeks passed, and the little bookshop became their haven. Daniel would bring his notebook and pencil, scribbling fragments of music, while Clara sat nearby sketching with charcoal. Often, silence filled the room, but it was the kind of silence that made them feel less alone. One night, Daniel asked, "Would you like to hear what you've inspired?" He took her to a small concert hall where an old piano waited under the stage lights. His fingers moved across the keys, and the music that spilled out was both fragile and powerful. Clara felt as though every note carried a piece of her soul. She closed her eyes, and tears slipped down her cheeks, not of sadness, but of recognition. She realized she had been waiting for this, for someone who could see her heart without needing words. Their days together grew into months. They walked along the Ponte Vecchio at dusk, shared secrets over cups of espresso, and watched fireworks from the hills of Piazzale Michelangelo. Daniel finished his composition at last, a sonata he titled The Song of Two Hearts. On the first night of spring, he performed it for a crowded theater. But as his eyes searched the audience, they found only Clara. After the applause faded, Daniel took her hand backstage. "Stay with me," he whispered, not as a question but as a promise. Clara knew that life was uncertain, that Daniel might one day return to London, and she might have to leave the safety of her bookstore. But at that moment, she realized love was not about certainty. It was about choosing, again and again, even when the future was a mystery. So she smiled through her tears and said, "Always." And in the quiet aftermath of the music, beneath the stars of Florence, two hearts found their forever song.